Okay, so before we get going on talking about attributes within blocks, does anybody have any questions on blocks themselves? The idea behind them or how to create them? Okay, I'm going to talk about attributing blocks, but in that I'm going to have to create a couple blocks, so we will go back over that today. Okay, let me go to our modules here and just take a look. So we have our blocks here. So the assignments that I do have available, we have the block insertion tutorial, which we looked at. We have W blocks. I hadn't made these last two available quite yet, but I got a question about the dimensions of doors, so I made this one available, and I will make this one available today as well. Okay, I'm going to see how far we get today. We're for sure going to talk about attributes, and if we have time, I'll do some drafting. If not, we'll just push that to Monday, and we'll just take Monday and do drafting and answer questions. But under blocks, we have our readings here, of course, so we can take a look at that to find out information on attributes within blocks, okay? Creating a block, write block, inserting a block, all that good stuff. Actually, let's see, I think we might be missing. Inserting blocks, there we go. Okay. All right, so let's talk about blocks. I want to talk about adding attributes to those, okay? So when we create a block, I'm going to, for example, show you how to create some blocks out of a few of these objects in here. So we've got the bathtub, we have the sink right here, and we have our toilet right here, okay? So if I click on our toilet and I click on our tub, it looks as if those have already been made into blocks, okay? And I know that because a block is a collection of model geometry that is sort of glued together so it appears as one object, right? We talked about last time how some advantages of using blocks in your drawings. They help with precision because you only have to draw objects one time, and of course if you draw them dimensionally correct, then when you use them again, they will be correct again as well, which helps you not make a mistake when you draw things multiple times. So blocks are good for precision. They are helpful in just drawing in general. So I can take a block and I can copy it, I can move it, I can rotate it, and it's all one piece. So instead of having 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 15, 30, 40 different pieces of geometry that I have to select before I perform an operation like copying, moving, rotating, with a block I only have to select something one time. Okay, so that's pretty nice. I can, if I have a block that I've copied around my model space and I have 400 instances of it, the nice thing about a block is that if I change it one time, it updates and changes in every occurrence. Okay, so if I change one block, it updates 400 instances of that same named block if there are that many in the drawing. Okay, so all of those great things blocks help with. One thing about a block is that once we define it, we can undefine it if we need to, right? So I can take this bathtub block, this toilet block. I'm going to make a copy of these just down below here so we can look at them separate from the floor plan. But if I have a block created and I want to get rid of it or undefine it, I can explode it. So that's pretty nice. I can create a block and then I can undefine it. So explode, enter, select the object to explode, enter, right, and it goes away. Okay? Explode, enter, select the object to explode, enter, and it goes away. Okay? So I can define blocks, I can undefine them, I can insert blocks. And one thing about inserting blocks, we do have two types of blocks. We have a regular old block, and when I create a regular old block, it defines itself or creates itself in the drawing it's currently in. So the thing about a block is that if I create a regular old block, BLOCK, then when I generate it, it's only going to be available in the drawing I created in. Okay, so that's one thing you want to remember. And if I create a W block, which is an abbreviation of write block, that means that the block that I create with a write block or a W block, that file is written out of AutoCAD and it's available for use in multiple files. Okay, so we have blocks, we have W blocks. They help us. Okay. All right, so there's some other things that we can do with blocks that we're going to talk about today, and that is one of the things we can do is we can build in information into our blocks. So we can build in information that we maybe don't use on a daily basis, and we can build in information that we do use on a daily basis. Okay, so I'm just going to pull up our, let's see here, an assignment here real quick. Hold on one second. Okay. All right, so we have our attributed block assignment that we're going to be doing, and you're going to be creating some doors, you're going to be creating some windows and some furniture that's going to go into your layout assignment. And those attributed blocks, we're going to talk about how to create those, but those attributed blocks are going to be used in your layout assignment, your office layout assignment, okay? So here's what they look like. Okay, there's some instructions on how to generate these. Okay, so we have the door and window symbol, we have the door and window, or the door and window tags, we have the door, more instruction on the door and window tags here, we have the furniture right here, and then we have kind of a graphic of what these look like. Okay, so we have a single door, we have a double door, here are windows, they indicate what the tags look like, all that good stuff. Okay, so you'll see all of this stuff. Just pull up our next thing that I want here. Okay, you'll see all of these in Canvas, and you'll see all of the blocks in the, sorry guys, let me pull this up, the layout assignment. All right, so in our office layout, of course, and I'm going to open up this drawing. I should have had this open before, but this is what it looks like. Okay, so the blocks that we talk about today in attribute are going to be used in this assignment. All right, so we have our furniture, we have our doors, we have our windows, we have the tags, and then like this computer right here, and who has a phone like that anymore? I guess in an office you do, right? We're going to talk about how to get some of these other blocks that maybe you haven't drawn using the Design Center. Okay. Okay, so let's talk about, I'm going to show you again how to create just a regular block, and then we're gonna add the attributes in, okay? So to create a regular old block, the first thing we want to do is draw our object, and we want it to be dimensionally correct. We also want it to be created on layer 0, okay? So the first thing I'm going to do, this toilet is already drawn for me, I'm going to select it, and I'm just going to come over here to Home and make sure that it was actually created on layer 0, which it was, so that looks correct. So I'm going to block it, and in this case I'm going to W block it. Unless you're creating a block that in your template file that you know that you will be using in your template file more than once, I would say that using W block is likely better practice than just creating regular old blocks, okay? And the reason I say that is because it saves out a copy of your block. So even if you're not sure if you'll use it again, there could be the chance that you may want to. And it's no more work to create a W block than a regular old block. Okay, so my best advice when creating blocks is to create just a W block. And that way, you know, you sort of have dual usage of it. So I can come over here to Insert, and I have under Block Definition, I have Create Block. I'm going to create a right block. I want this object selected. I'm going to choose a pick point. I'm bumped out of the block dialog box. I can click on this, maybe this back midpoint of my toilet. I select my objects, click, I grab my objects, enter, and then I tell AutoCAD where to save that file out. So I click on this little ellipsis, and I go to my block library, and this is A-pfix- right? Toilets, lavatories. I'm going to hit save, okay. That block is created, and when it's created, it's immediately inserted. It's kind of an automatic operation that happens when you choose convert to block in this right block definition. So convert to block means it creates this block and it automatically inserts it into your drawing, okay. So when that happens, it's automatically inserted on the current layer. This layer is a wall exterior, and that's why it turned yellow, because it was inserted onto that current layer, okay? And again, it does that because it was created on layer 0, and layer 0 allows blocks to assume the properties of the layer that they were generated on. when you insert them. Okay, I can grab this toilet, I can drop down, I can change it to, looks like we don't have a plumbing fixture layer, so I'm going to go to layer properties, click on new, and we'll call this a-pfix dash, well, we won't even do a dash, we'll just do pfix. We will give it a cyan color, hit OK, or magenta, whatever. Grab it by selecting it, drop down, change it to plumbing fixture. Okay. If I wanted to undo that block, I could explode it. All right. So those are regular old blocks. And now, as I had talked about before, if we go to our block library where I save that right block out, right, Autodesk, block library, then I have my a-pfix lavatory right there, right? So that W block operation did work. My toilet block was written out of AutoCAD and generated in my block library. Okay. So let's talk about adding attributes to our blocks, okay? And attributes visually are going to show up as a tag here, okay? But the attribute isn't actually the tag, it's the definition behind the tag, really, all right? So, oops, that is not, oh boy, now I have to find the page I was on. Let's see if we can do that. Oh, there we go. Oop. Okay. So you will see the visual evidence of that attribute, like is this number 1 inside of this circle, okay? That number 1 is the attribute, and it indicates the attribute, but it's not the definition of the attribute, okay? What is an attribute and why are they helpful? Well, an attribute, it adds a level of built-in information to your block, okay? And that information can be used elsewhere in your architectural drawings. And what I mean by that is a common example of a block in an architectural drawing would be a door, okay? And a door has information that people need to know about, right? We need to know how big the door is. We need to know what the panel is made out of. We need to know if there's a fire rating. We need to know the swing, all that good stuff, okay? And an attribute that is defined into a block tells, you know, another person, maybe the builder who's building the project, that information, okay? So I can define an attribute, which also means define information about that object into the block. So an attribute will tell things like the size of the door. It will tell things like if it's fire rated. It will tell things like what the door panel is made out of or what type of frame the door has, okay? So within an attribute I can say this is a 3-foot wide by 7-foot tall door. It is a solid wood door. It has a hollow frame around it, and it has a 1-hour fire rating. Okay, so I can define that information into this door using attributes. Now, when we actually create the attribute, you'll say, well, that's great, I defined that information in there, but how do I kind of extract that information out once I have defined it in? And the answer is in the form of a schedule usually, which we're not going to get into in this class, but you can do it in AutoCAD. So you build the information in so that later on you could extract that information out in the form of like a door schedule, okay? So that's pretty helpful because I can take this door, define it, put information into it, and then extract it out into a schedule format instead of having to go through a floor plan and look at door number 1 and in text format type in all the information about a door into a schedule, okay? If you haven't worked in an office, you don't know how terrible that task is, creating door schedules, creating window schedules. It's a terrible, terrible job if you're working in AutoCAD. So anything that you can do to make that easier is really welcome. And attributes will do that for you, essentially, right? So just know that attributes are information that it's built into your blocks. And it's built into blocks so that you can then extract it out later in schedule format, okay? So let's talk about attributes. This tag right here, so this tag is a circle, it's a door tag, it says number 1. That defines this door as door type number, or door number 1. And it's defined as door number 1 because it has some specific properties about it that are special to door number 1. So with every door, you're going to see a tag, and the tags for doors are numbered, okay? So each door has a unique number, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, okay? Windows, they have tags as well, and those tags are going to be lettered. So doors are numbered. They have a unique number. Every door has a unique number, and every window has a letter. Although windows are a little bit different than doors in that when you have a window that is the same size as another window, they both have the same tag / mark, okay? So if you have 2,000 windows in a building, and they're all 3-foot double hung windows by 7 foot tall, they will all be letter A, okay? Regardless of how many there are with windows, they'll all be letter A. However, if you have 10,000 6-foot by 6 foot wide by 7 foot tall double doors, you will have I don't remember how many I said, 1 through 10,000, right? You won't have just one mark on your door. It's just kind of how things go. So the letter or the number indicates the attribute, but the attributes are actually kind of in text format in a hidden style behind that, okay? So when we create our attributes, you'll see them like this, but when you actually create the block, the attribute will look like this, okay? Attributes are used in doors and windows and plumbing fixtures and all that good stuff. The other place that attributes are used in a block format are going to be in title blocks, okay? And we won't be extracting information out of a title block, but another functionality of an attribute is that you can define it so that you can just type information into something instead of having to add text every time, okay? So I can define in a class attribute, or what drawing is this, or the scale of the drawing attribute, so that I can change the text here without having to create a text box and get it placed correctly and all that good stuff. I can place an attribute in my title block so that I can just change it and have that read correctly, okay? So let's talk about, I think we're gonna end up taking this lecture into Monday, and that's totally fine. But I really wanna just get through how to define attributes today, and then we'll regroup and bring it all together, it looks like maybe on Monday, okay? All right. So the workflow, when you're creating a block with an attribute, is that you create the attribute before you actually create the block, okay? So we're going to, number 1, draw the block on layer 0. We're going to add the tag, we're going to add our attributes, and then we're going to block, okay? And the function of actually creating the block is what defines the attributes. And that, I think all of this, when I say it out loud, it doesn't sound great, it sounds confusing, but when I actually do it on the screen, it makes sense, okay? So I'm just going to pull my AutoCAD over to half my screen. I always love trying to do halvesies here. We'll pull, there we go. We'll pull our PDF here into the other side of our screen. And I'm going to start creating some of these blocks here. I'm going to draw them and start demonstrating how to create attributes using these doors from your assignment, okay? So I'm going to create this left-hand door, and we're going to define an attribute into it, okay? I'm going to delete these first. And so I'm going to come over here. I'm going to make sure, number 1, that I'm on layer 0. And I'm terrible about this. This is kind of my one Achilles heel in AutoCAD. My workflow isn't always very clean with regards to layers. I tend to draw a lot of stuff, and then I go back and I layer it, okay? So it's a very good practice to change your layer first and then draw, but I don't always quite get there, okay? Okay, so this is what I was looking for, and this talks about, we're going to be creating annotative door tags with attributes, okay? And this is really kind of the first semester I think we've done this, and the reason is because we're using annotative text, more so in AutoCAD than ever before, but the reason we're going to do this, we're going to create an annotative door tag / attribute, is because we want our text, this is an attribute right here, right, this number 3, we want our text with this number 3 to flex with the scale of our drawing, okay? And so that's why we're going to be creating an annotative door tag when we create our attributes, okay? So here, to create a non-annotative door block, which is what we have been doing previously, you would follow all of the instructions that we have done before, okay? We're not going to make our blocks annotative, so our blocks, regardless of what scale they're at, they're going to stay the same size. What really needs to flex is this text that goes along with our attribute within our tags, okay? So when we create our I'm sorry, I'm losing attributes. When we create our attributes, that's where we're going to create the annotative text, okay? All right, so first thing I'm going to do is I am going to create my block, okay? So I am going to draw my block here using layer 0. So layer, I'm going to change this to layer 0, and I am going to, where is my assignment? There we go. Oh my gosh, look, I've got it working. I'm going to create this left-hand door here first. So it's a 3-foot left-hand door. Okay, great. So I'm going to use line, and I'm going to click F8 to turn ortho on. I'm going to type 36 inches. You'll see me typing in inches instead of feet. So instead of typing 3 feet, which is totally valid, I type 36 inches, okay? I don't like to look for that little foot mark over on my keyboard, okay? And I can't remember, I think the panel was 1.5 inches, something like that. And I come down here, click, click, and I've got my panel created. You could use an arc to generate your door swing, but I like to use a circle, okay? So I'm going to click on my door, create my circle, L for line, enter, TR, enter, enter, trim, and I trim that out, okay? I drew my line right here so that my circle had a place to trim off at. And now that I'm done with it, I hit delete, okay? All right, so that was pretty easy, right? The next thing I need to do is I need to create this little tag bubble right here, okay? So I'm going to do that, and I'm going to circle, and the text that we're going to generate in here is 3:30 seconds, so we want to make sure that that accommodates that. So 3:30 seconds, little smaller than an eighth, so let's do, well, we're not going to be able to tell the size from here because it's bigger, but let's just try something like that size. And if we have to, we'll make it a little bit bigger. So I'm guessing on the size of the circle there, but if we have to make it a little bit bigger, we can. Now, one thing I want to do here is I drew the circle and I guessed at the size, right, just by kind of looking at this. And if I have to adjust it, I can. But I want it to be sort of centered inside of this door, okay? So I'm going to type L for line, and I'm going to draw a line from here to the midpoint of that arc. And then I'm going to move my circle onto that, okay? So if I grab my circle and I click on that middle grip, I can align it to the midpoint of that to that line. Click, delete, and my line is gone, right? But I was able to center my circle from, you know, this point to that point, which is kind of nice, right? So if you are trying to do what I just did and your thing is bumping all around, press F8 to, you know, if it's constrained, F8. If it's not constrained, F8 again, right? Just to see if maybe it's getting constrained. Okay, so that looks pretty good to me. Now I can create my attribute now if I want to, which might be a good idea because attributes can be copied. But one other thing I want to show you is, you know, you have 1, 2, 3 doors really right here that you have to generate, right? And I think the logical thing when you first start with AutoCAD is to think, okay, time to draw my next door. Draw, 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 there's my door, right? But we want to get fast at AutoCAD. We want to be, we want to make sure that we're being quick and that we're not drawing things that we don't have to redraw. And if you think about it, this left-hand door, right, if you mirror it and you get the mirrored copy, you'd have a right-hand door. Very nice, right? And if you mirrored it about this point, this end point, which is that end point right there, you would get a double door, Okay, so really you only have to draw one of these, and you can mirror it and copy it, and you would have the other two. Okay, so MI, enter, select the objects, enter, pick your mirror point, click, click, enter, and there's my double door. Okay, so I'm going to copy CO, select, enter, we'll copy down here. And again, I'm creating some attributes, and so attributes can be copied, so I'm probably doing this a little premature, but I just wanted to bring this idea up right now, okay? I can grab this side of my door up here, M for move it over, and I have a right-hand door, I have a left-hand door, and I have a double door now, okay? And, you know, this kind of stuff will come to you, and I know that's easy to say right now, but I think a lot of people struggle at first with AutoCAD because they're trying to be the most efficient they can be, but without actually having, you know, kind of some more experience in AutoCAD, you're not going to be super efficient in the beginning, right? But as you start using it, you'll learn, oh, if I copy that, it will be very efficient. If I move it, that will be very efficient. If I rotate it, or if, you know, whatever, that'll be very efficient. So you'll get better at this. Let me just, there is hope. Let me just give you that, okay? All right. So we just drew our doors. Now I'm going to, I want to define an attribute, okay? So your assignment, I'm on the assignment here. You're going to attribute your doors and your windows, okay? And let's see, we have single doors are 3 foot wide and 1 3/4 thick. So I drew mine a little bit different, but that's okay. Let's see. When we create our attributes, I think I'm just going to go back to the assignment for now. Here we go. Oop. Okay. We're going to create a number and a size attribute within this door, okay? And really, we're creating a number and a size attribute, but attributes can be anything. They can be frivolous, like if you want to add a note in here that says something like, this is a specialty door, which is not really frivolous, but we have to order from, you know, ABC door manufacturing for this one. You can add notes and comments as an attribute, or it can be very specific. So things like, the door number, the door size, the door height, the door material. Okay, so attributes can really be anything. The way that we're going to create this attribute, we're going to come over to insert. Yes. Let's see, edit attribute. No. Define attribute. There we go. Okay. Under block definition, we have define attributes, and we have edit attributes over here. Okay, we have an attribute manager. So those are the three things we're going to be using. Now, I want to say this, and I don't want to discourage you, but I would say that probably out of a lot of things in AutoCAD, at least in the past, and maybe I'm bringing my baggage from, I don't know, like AutoCAD 2002, who knows, right? But the attributes are kind of finicky. They're just a little bit finicky in that if you don't create them correctly the first time, it's quite difficult to go back and edit them to make them correct, okay? And so sometimes they create correctly, sometimes they don't. Sometimes if you created and you made a mistake and you want to redefine the block, it doesn't quite work very well, okay? So block attributes, if something is you know, misdefined, or something doesn't quite work, or you changed your mind about an attribute, likely the best way to go about editing those would be to just kind of delete and start over, okay? So this is one of those lectures where generally I expect everything to go pretty well, but attributes are just finicky. Sometimes I have to delete and redefine, or something doesn't quite work, or whatever happens, right? All right, before I get going on this, I'm going to change my annotative workspace to 1-to-1 because I'm going to attempt to create an annotative attribute here, okay? Before I do that, I'm going to make sure that I have a text style that's annotative that I can use in here, okay? So I'm going to go over to annotate, and I'm going to create a new text style. So new attribute text, 30 seconds. Okay. Oh, can't do that. So we'll do when we haven't done before. Swiss LTBT, good old Swiss LTBT. Light font, annotative, we want it 3/32 of an inch. That looks good. We'll give it a width factor of maybe 0.80 just for fun. Hit apply. So I have an annotative text style here. I click on it and I hit set current. Okay, and I'm going to close out of that. Now, one thing I want to point out here is that this text that we create for our attributes, it's going to be annotative. And I want to warn you that when you create it, let me come back over here to my workbook, that just like when we created our dimension style, it flexed a little bit, okay? And that means that, sorry guys, when I create it, it may not look quite correct when I generate it the first time, okay? Where did it go? There it is. Okay, so this is all laid out, and I'm going to post this on your overview document in Canvas. I haven't done that yet, but our workspace is 1-to-1. We have generated our annotative block, or our block geometry. Okay, now it's time to create the annotative door tag, and here in our block definition, okay, so here are all the instructions. Make this block called door tag, make the insertion the center of the circle, select convert to block option, make sure the annotated box is selected under behavior in inches, which is this right here, and save this drawing as door underscore tag DWG, all right? So here's what we're going to do. We are going to create this, and this is sort of what it's going to look like, okay? This is what I wanted to warn you about. The door tag will dynamically change depending on the annotative scale set, okay, at the time of insertion. Below is the same block with different scale settings. So just like text, right, and I've warned you about this, when you change your annotative scale, it bumps up and down in size depending on what you're doing, okay? So what we're going to do here is we're going to define our attributes. We're going to create our annotative door tag here, and then we're going to create a W block. Okay. All right. So creating an annotative door tag to be used in all drawings. Here we go. All right. So we have already opened up a new blank drawing. We've created an annotative text style. We've set our annotation scale 1-to-1, okay? We're in the process right now of creating our door tag, which contains the attributes you want to add to your door block, okay? So here we go. We have our door drawn. We have our tag here. It's time to create an attribute. So I'm going to go back over here to define attributes. I'm going to click on that, okay, and I'm going to add my attributes, okay. You know what, we might just get to creating our attributes today and have to come back to a little bit of this, creating the rest of the dynamic block. But all right, so let's talk about our attribute definition dialog box. This is where you define the attribute, and again, the attribute talks about information inside of the door block. So here are some visual settings for our attribute. Here are our definition sort of tags, okay? And then here are the text settings for our attributes here, all right? So we have, let me show you over here. This is what our attributes will look like when we generate them, okay? So the first one that we have says number, and when we create this attribute, we want it to show the number, all right? So that means that we want that to be visible. However, the second attribute that we create that says size, we don't want that to show. We want it to be built into the block, but we want it to be invisible. So these settings right here control those things. So the first attribute that we generate, which will be number, we want it to be visible. And the second one that we generate that is called size, we want it to be invisible, okay? So the first one, let's create our door number here, okay? I'm going to make sure that it's visible. Constant means that it will have a constant setting. So this one says number 3. We want to be able to edit this door number attribute to change it per door. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Okay. If we click on constant, it'll remain constant and won't allow you to edit it. It will just stay like 1. Okay. Verify will ask you to verify it before it defines it. Preset is somewhat like constant. Lock position means once you create the attribute, it stays in its place, meaning you can't rotate it. So 3, this attribute right here, if you'd created this and locked it in position, you couldn't move it even to rotate it. Multiple lines, we can check that if you want to add multiple lines of text or whatever to your attribute. Okay. So I'm going to leave these as is right now. The insertion point, where do we want our attribute to live inside of our block? I'm going to click and place it. So we're going to specify on screen. We have tag, prompt, and default. Okay, let me just fill these out, and then when I actually create this, I'll show you what it means. All right. We have our text settings here, and we'll set those before we actually define our attribute. Okay. All right. So tag, I'm going to type in door number, and prompt is going to be door space number. And the default value will just be the little hashtag. Now the rules about tags are that you cannot have any spaces in a tag. Okay? If you have a space and I hit OK, it will say there cannot be spaces in the door tag. Okay? Door number, and then I'm going to change my text to attribute text number 3. My justification is going to be middle center. So this is what I want my attribute definition dialog box to look like for right now. Okay. I'm going to hit OK, and when I do, I'm going to be bumped out of this dialog box, and it's going to ask me to specify on screen where my attribute is going to live inside of my door tag. I'm going to hit OK. I'm going to click and place it, and there it is, door number. Okay. Now it's tiny, right? Remember, because it's annotative. And it's important to make it annotative so that when you change the scale of your drawing, it bumps up size appropriately. Right now we have this set to 1:1, and if I change this to 1/4 inch is equal to a foot, you see it jumps sizes, right? So there's not anything wrong, it's just doing what it needs to be doing. There's 1/8 inch, right? There is 1/2 inch. Okay. All right. So there's our first attribute. Okay, I'm going to now create a second attribute. That was easy enough, right? So I'm going to click on Define Attributes. This one, though, I want to be invisible because I only want my door number to show up here. I don't want like the size of the door and the door panel material and all that good stuff to show up. So this one, I'm going to click on Invisible. Okay, and I'm also going to choose Align Below Previous Attribute Definition here. So I'm going to click that because I've already generated one, and so AutoCAD gets that you want to generate these in sequence and have them live right below each other. Okay, so instead of now having to specify where it goes on screen below this one and hopefully it gets in the right spot, I can click on Align Below Previous. See that? And now all of my text settings gray out, and that's right because AutoCAD is just going to put the next attribute in the same spot but below the first one. Okay, our next attribute will be door size, no space. The prompt, door size. And the default, let's just type, we can just do SIZE, something like that. Okay, I'm going to hit OK. And another one pops up there, right? Right now what I'm doing again is I'm defining attributes. Okay. All right. So let's create one more. Define attributes. This one is going to be invisible also because I want it to go below that initial door, the door size one. Align below previous. We need to remember that. Okay. And this one can be door panel. Door panel. And then the default will be something like I don't know, you can put whatever in there because it's going to ask you to change it, essentially. We could type in wood. I hit OK, and it creates that attribute. Okay? So this is what they look like All right, now it's time for me to put them into the block and define them. All right. Okay. Okay, just one second. Okay, sorry, before I actually define this, I want to show you this information, right? The door number, the door size, the material. This is what a door schedule looks like right here. So eventually, you know, if you end up using AutoCAD in a more advanced manner, this is where the information will go, right? So this is a sample of what things look like. This is our tag, our prompt, our value, right? And this is essentially what they will look like once they're extracted out. Okay. I want to make sure I don't leave anything out here, so one second. And I want to show you this again because I think this is a confusing series of events that's going to be happening, and I'm actually hoping it works. Again, attributes are a little tricky, so I'm hoping this works perfectly for us on the screen, but this is where I'm at in the process. So we're going to create an annotative door tag first, okay? So we're going to block the door tag, and then we're going to create our annotative door. Okay, block. Okay, so the first thing here, look at this, just make sure we're all on the same page. We're going to make our door tag a block. We're going to call it door tag. We're going to make it annotative here. All right, now the reason why we're doing two blocks, we're going to block out the door tag and then we're going to block our door, is because we want our door tag to flex and to be bigger and smaller according to scale, but we want our door to stay the same size. Okay. So we have our door tag, it's annotative, okay, and then we're going to, we went past it, then we're going to create our door block. So we have two series of events that are going to happen here, okay. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to block these, and that's going to activate the attributes. So I'm going to click on write block, or we'll just do create a block for right now, and this is going to be called door tag. My pick point. My pick point's going to be this little point right here, because if I were to insert this tag into a door, I would want to insert it a specific distance away from this point. So I click there. Okay. I'm going to select my objects, enter. I'm going to click on annotative, making it annotative. Okay. And we're going to click match block. No, we're going to leave that alone. We're going to hit OK. Okay, so when I hit OK, it says, great, you are now, you've defined your attributes. Let's input what they actually, the values are. So I can type in the door number, number 1. I can type in the door size here, 3 foot 0 inches, 3 foot 0 inches by, 7 foot 0 inches. And let's say that instead of just wood, this is cherry wood. Okay, so this screen right here, this edit attributes, is where you input the information that will then go into that schedule that I showed you. So I hit OK, and now instead of showing all those attributes, I see a number 1. Okay, and I can double click on it, click, and I'm bumped into the enhanced, this is enhanced, attribute editor. Okay, so I could change this to 2 if I wanted and hit OK. I could double click on that and change this from cherry wood to birch wood and hit OK. All right. Okay. It's a really complicated process. When we talk through it, it sounds very long, but when you actually do it, right, it's not terrible. I guess we'll just say that. Okay. All right. So we've created our attributes there. Let's define some more attributes over here. Okay, let's do that one more time. All right, before we finalize this, we're going to actually finalize this by making our door a block. Okay. Let me get back over to our graphic here. Okay. Does it somewhat make sense what we're doing here, where we're building this information in that can then be extracted out into a schedule like this? Okay, this is something we won't be doing in here, but this is why we're doing it, essentially. Okay, and so I'm going to post this on Canvas. I haven't posted it yet, but this is what you're going to do to define all your blocks. Okay. your door blocks, I guess I should say. And this is why. All right, so let's define some attributes in this door tag over here. All right, so we're essentially creating an annotative door tag, and then we're going to block that into our door. So I'm going to click on Define Attributes. Okay, and invisible is checked again because it was checked the last time that we created an attribute. So I'm going to uncheck that. I'm going to create my door number first. Okay. Each of these attributes is specific to the door block you're generating them in. Okay, so I just want to say that because you're like, we're creating the exact same attributes but in another door, and the answer, yeah, we are, right? The prompt here, we could say door number, and then default will just be number. And again, the tag can't have any gaps in it, but the prompt can. I'm going to specify this on screen. Our text is going to be middle center. And we're going to use our attribute text, annotative, and hit OK. And then I click in the middle of that bubble, click, and there goes my door number. Okay, I'm going to do this again, define attribute. This one's going to be invisible because it's going to be our second attribute. So I'm going to, this one's going to be called, let's do door material. Door material, and the default will be dash dash. Now this one's going to be invisible. I'm going to click on align below the previous attribute, hit OK, and it creates another one. Let's create a third one. Define attribute, invisible, and this one will be door size. The prompt can be, you know, dashes again. Oops, nope, sorry. Door size, and I broke my own rule. There's no, I forget all the time. No gaps in door tag, no spaces. Invisible, align below, hit OK. Okay. All right, so I have all of my attributes created. Now it's time for me to make those attributes, to make them working, to activate them essentially. Okay, and so I'm going to choose create block. We'll call this door tag 2. Hit OK. Oops, excuse me. Select objects. Enter. Pick point. Click. Hit OK. And now it's activating them and asking me to input information. So door number, we're going to type in, let's do 32, 33, whatever. Door material, let's make this steel. And then the door size, 3 foot 6 inches by 8 foot 0 inches. I'm going to hit OK, and my door tag has been generated. Okay, does that make sense to everybody so far? Double click on it. Yep, so click, click. There you go. Mine probably looks just a little bit bigger. Yours looks a little smaller. I probably took mine and made it larger. Just drug it. Is it working? The question that I got was, let me just copy this over here real quick. The question I got was, I'm going to explode this. You were saying, hey, when I double click on my attribute, I get this, right? And I just exploded this one. And it's because if you double click on this, thinking that you're going to be able to change it to a number before you actually block this object, these objects are not activated. They're kind of like raw attributes at this point, right? So when you block this, it packages it up and makes them active so that you can edit them in terms of like putting an actual number in there instead of editing the actual attribute itself. Okay, so that's what you were doing. You were double clicking on the attribute. You weren't double clicking on the blocked in sort of activated attribute. Does that make sense? Okay, so to get these activated again, you would block them. Pick a point, click, select objects, enter, click on annotative, okay, and then you type in, you know, 5, door size. I'm not going to put anything in here. Oh, door number, sorry, 5. Door material, cherry. Okay. Okay, any questions so far? Yep.
So when I do that, my text is like super small. How can we fix that?
So your text is super small because it's annotative,
Oh, okay.
right? And it's easy to forget that, right? You're like, oh, I created it, and then it's tiny, I can't see it, right? And it's because your annotative scale down here, like mine is a 1/2 inch, but if I change it to 1:1, yours is probably like that. Does that make sense? Yeah. But if I change it back to a 1/2 inch or whatever, it adds that annotative scale to it, and it becomes the size it needs to be. Okay. Any questions so far? I think I'm going to stop here today, and we're going to finish this lecture on Monday, okay? I want you to, that's a lot of information to digest, the idea of creating these blocks that have attributes in them. And I want you to become comfortable with creating your door tag first, and then we're going to talk about on Monday how to bring it really all together, okay? So creating the door tag, attributing it, creating the block, drawing all the other blocks, and then how to bring them into your floor plates to use them, okay? Okay.